hast taught to do so. Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect.
Glory be to God
forever. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. We are approaching the end of the first week. Don't get excited. I didn't mean to get your hopes all up. The first week, not the end of the fast. So we're about tomorrow is actually the Sunday. They call it the Sunday of the Treasures, or Sunday of Preparation. And actually, the reason they call it that it's called like this is because it's meant to prepare us for this beautiful journey of fasting, this beautiful journey of spiritual instruction, if you will. And so you'll notice that during the Great Fast, there will be a lot of themes, as we talked about before, that the church always has a theme for everything. Nothing is ever random. No reading that is selected is random. Okay, I feel like putting this gospel today, and that's how the church fathers did it. That's not how it works. So everything has kind of a message behind it and something to build us up spiritually, especially during the Sundays and the weekends. You'll notice that it's a theme that carries with us for the whole week. So when we talk about the idea of preparation, there's many things that we can talk about, right? When it comes to building treasures for ourselves in heaven. And we're going to hear that gospel tomorrow. Today's gospel talks about something that's so important for me in order to kind of clean the slate for me to be able to fill myself spiritually. And that's the idea of forgiveness, or the idea of not seeking revenge. The idea of, it is written that, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. This is very powerful, because it's very easy for us to read, and we come to church and we say, we're Christian, I'm forgiving, okay. Let's get outside, let somebody cut you off while you're driving. And let's see this attitude side. It becomes very hard. It's almost becoming in our nature as human beings that we need to, when someone does something to us, return the favor. This idea of returning the favor, especially in the negative. Now, we have to really differentiate and discern between two things. And actually, this was an interesting question that one of the youth at our church asked. If somebody was to hit me, am I allowed to hit him back? Right? It's a very tricky question, and I'll tell you why. Because it gets into, if you say no, well, what if somebody is about to kill you and you have to defend yourself and things like that, right? But there's an idea here. We need to differentiate between me defending myself or my family if somebody is bestowing harm on us and we're protecting our lives. That's one thing. And from seeking revenge, right? So ask yourself, in any situation, is this a situation that can pass? Like, am I gonna, if somebody said something to me, said something about me, or about my kids, or about my family, right? Of course, if it's something, if somebody tries to ruin your son or your daughter's reputation or something like this, it is your responsibility, even if you're not going to look at it as if, okay, I forgive the person, it is your responsibility to protect your daughter, to protect your son. This is not at all what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, how am I going to retaliate? Is it going to be by, okay, he's talking about my son or daughter, let me talk about his family or her family, right? There's a difference there, and I hope that you see it. The idea of forgiveness is very important. Yes, I can put boundaries, and yes, I can defend my family, but this does not give the okay for me to seek revenge. The idea of revenge is not ours. The idea of bestowing harm on someone for harming us is not ours. And it's so important for us to hold on to this during the fast, because I cannot successfully fast or feel the spiritual benefits of the fast if I have any kind of, in Arabic, if I have any kind of hidden inside of me, like any kind of negativity towards people inside of me, I will never be able to enjoy the benefits of the fast. Because I'm going to come to church and all I'm going to think about is that one person I can't stand that's standing there. Or I'm going to think always negatively whenever I try to reach any spiritual goals. Because just like we are treasuring for ourselves treasures in heaven, the devil is using these earthly treasures, that we unfortunately sometimes store within us against us, right? He will use it against us. And it's so important, in order for us to start preparing ourselves for this journey of the fast, to clear our consciences, and to clear our hearts, and to truly soften our hearts towards others. It's so important, right? The idea of turning the cheek, if they slap you, whoever slaps you in the right cheek, turn the other cheek to him, is very, very powerful, right? And it kind of here hints towards the idea of treasuring, right? When it says, if anyone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak also. You know, like very simply, if somebody is going to take something from you, خلاص, إيه اللي حصل يعني؟ يعني don't, today, يعني, this is الصليب, it's not like we have one shirt or one tunic or whatever, right? يعني إيه اللي حصل? I remember one time, actually, this is something that my dad taught me. We were talking about the idea after we moved to Texas, the idea of everyone having weapons in their house and things like this, right? And it's الصليب هنا, يعني, you have more weapons than books and stuff like that sometimes. And so the idea of like, so he was telling me, he was like, so what do you think about this? And of course, you know, being young and not so smart, I was like, of course, we need the guns and the knives and stuff to protect our families and stuff like this. So he told me, I want to ask you a question. What would you do if somebody came here right now, broke into our house, and tried to steal? If you have a weapon, would you actually do something? He said, well, I told him I have to defend my family. And he said, you know, I'll tell you something. If somebody comes in here and tries to steal something, let him do it, because nothing in this world is as precious as life. If it's a material good, let him take fidahiyah. That's actually the actual expression that he said. But his life is more worth anything. No matter how much we have, no matter what he steals, nothing is going to be worth as much as his life. And this is the attitude that Christ wants to bestow on us. But of course, he said it's different if somebody's trying to harm your family, that's different. Yes, it is your responsibility to defend them. Another thing that is very wise that I heard from Abuna Athanasius, and this is something that actually opened my eyes to a lot of things. I'm passing on to you guys a lot of teachings that I've heard myself. Is even, if somebody tries to harm your family, right? Or somebody does something against your family. Okay, even although you're saying okay, no eye for an eye, or okay, I forgive this person, I don't need to do anything, I'm going to be extremely passive. But it is your responsibility to defend your family, because it is their right as well, right? It's for you, as your responsibility in front of God, to protect your family, right? The reason I'm saying these is so that we don't differentiate and say that Abuna is telling us to get killed and stuff like that and be martyrs and things like that. No. You have to discern between revenge and actually protecting those that you love. And this is the first step to preparing ourselves to fast. Now let's talk a little bit about the treasures. The idea of treasures in heaven, and the idea of treasuring for ourselves things that will not go bad, right? This question was actually in a Sunday school lesson last week, and I was sitting in on this Sunday school class at church. And very interesting, it's a very funny story. They were asking the kids, okay, what kind of things do we have that we treasure here on earth? And the kids, PS5, مش عارف ايه, things like that, cars, all this, great stuff. And the servant asked, so, do cars a treasure that you can treasure in heaven? And the kid is like, of course not, it's too heavy to take up there. And what he was worried about is that the car is too heavy to take to heaven. That's what you get when you have a church that has so many people that love cars and things like that, that they think about the weight. That's very interesting. I never thought about that. So it's a very interesting thing when we look at the kind of the amount of answers that came side, and the reason I'm sharing this story. How many treasures they were able to come up with are things that they treasure here on earth, whether it's the PS5s, the cars that they see around them, the games, the toys, all this stuff. But then you ask them, what kind of treasures are the treasures of heaven? And it's like crickets in the room. What do you mean treasures of heaven? Right? And this is something that we have to really think about, right? When it talks about treasures, or the idea of treasuring for ourselves something in heaven, or preparing ourselves, these are the same thing, by the way. Treasuring for ourselves things that won't go bad is preparing ourselves. Because when we prepare ourselves for what is eternal, then we're treasuring for ourselves something that will never go bad. And The first thing is, in my opinion, is my spiritual canon, my prayer, right? How I pray, my consistency in prayer. The treasure here is the consistency. Treasure for yourself, consistency. I have to be consistent in everything in my life. And by the way, when we actually invest in these things, it will benefit us in what is spiritual and around us in the world. Because God always wants unity, but it's the devil that made things go bad. So this idea of consistency, if I'm consistent in my prayer and in my spiritual life, I will be consistent in anything else in my life. Whether it's my family, whether it's my work ethic, whether it's my relationships with my friends or my service or whatever the case may be. Consistency in learning to go to church on time. This is a problem that we have in not in Houston, not in one church, not in Houston. This is a problem that we have in our entire Egyptian culture. The idea of being on time, it's like as if I'm speaking a different language. Like we need to translate it somehow. Like if something is at 8 o'clock, we're there at like 9 or sharp 8. And the idea of being there on time is like an hour ahead, right? The idea of coming to liturgy on time means that I just have to attend the gospel. If I attend the gospel, that's what I don't know where this teaching came from. This is something that I think that came somewhere during throughout the history of the church to make people feel more fulfilled that they're here. So like we attended the gospel, so we're here before the liturgy of the faithful, so we're fine. Actually, this is wrong. This is not right. I'm training myself to give myself exceptions. The idea of giving myself exceptions, it doesn't exist, right? Like if I make excuses for myself, how many of us here would like it if people make excuses for themselves against us? Nobody. So why is this okay when I do it? When it comes to when we're talking about coming to church, everything from when the veil opens, I know here we don't have a veil, but from our pretend veil, when it opens, I would say, right? To the Matthew's prayers, to everything. These prayers are for everyone. It's not just for Abuna to say and that's it, or the deacon to respond with khalas. These prayers, when we pray like something like the liturgy, the litany of the departed, or the litany of the sick, or the litany of the travelers, don't we always tell people whenever we're traveling, for example, pray for me that my journey is successful? When someone is sick, pray for me because I'm sick. Okay, you have the opportunity to hear every time it is prayed, right? When somebody someone that is dear to us departs, we're always praying for them for God to repose their soul. We have these litanies. How many of us attend? And I always say this also, like whenever Abuna during the Mass turns around and says, take them away from us and from all your people, I turn around and I mention El Karesi or the dick. I feel like all your people, I should say all your chairs. Sometimes. So it's very important that we really keep in our mind, And the thing is, it's like if we're going to a movie or we're going to like a cruise or like something like that, the movie we have to be there 15 minutes early. لازم previews. ولازم to get popcorn. مش عارف ايه, right? It's so important. If I miss the first minute, the whole movie is ruined for me, right? And if I'm in a cruise or in a resort or something like this and breakfast is at 6 o'clock, we're going to be there at 5:45 in the morning. No one is going to say, why is breakfast so early? We're going to go have breakfast and go back to bed. Right? This is what usually happens. But when it comes to the liturgy, we always have exceptions for ourselves. It's okay, مش عارف ايه. So I have to look my best. And sometimes, I'm sorry, but this is more on the girl's side. I feel like, picking what color our earrings are going to be is not, I hate to break it to you. No one remembers what color, your earrings that you wore. This is self-fulfillment, right? And the thing is, the devil uses this to distract us from what is truly the core and the treasure that's in heaven, which is attending on time, filling ourselves with these prayers. If I'm not able to do this, and I'm not able to treasure my time correctly, I will not benefit from the fast. The second thing is, and the last thing that I want to leave you with, is the idea of how we pray, right? And how we fast. In order for me to pray correctly, I need to first get rid of one thing, and that is vain reputations. Sometimes we say things as a reputation, right? Without thinking about the words. Yes, the akbaya, we repeat it every day. But in the akbaya, we're supposed to feel the words. If we truly take the effort to feel the words that we pray, you will find such a value that you won't be able to describe. Because you can be praying the same psalm every day, but it gives you a different message.
focus on the Psalms, how we focus on the prayers that we are saying, how to truly direct our emotions to God. Our anger, how we tell God, I'm angry, I'm upset with this, solve this situation. How to keep myself accountable. I talk a lot about confession, but there's one thing during the fast I think is very relevant for us to keep in mind that is so important. Unfortunately, sometimes the week of preparation for the fast, or the first week of the fast, is like we take it as a week to prepare ourselves to fast by eating futari until the next week after that, or sometimes people are like, just the first 2 weeks. If I had to count how many times someone come to me, Abuna, Asana, the first 2 weeks kida so I can get my head in the game. Get your head in the game. Who did you absolve yourself here? Take my cross and absolve yourself. Where did you get this from? The idea of like giving ourselves is almost like absolving ourselves, without any guidance. How can we go about giving ourselves exception without actually going for spiritual guidance from our Father of Confession? It's important for you to be successful in the fast, to learn to not do anything without guidance. Okay? Even your Father of Confession and even Abuna in the church has their own Father of Confession and they get their own guidance. We don't get our guidance, we didn't wake up one day and the angel came down like, here's what you're gonna do. But none of us are at that level, right? So we all have a Father of Confession. We all have to get guidance from somewhere. And he who does not have a guide will always fail. I encourage you, when you stumble during the fast, or if you need to know how to fast, or if you're not used to fasting, if you don't know if what you're doing is right or wrong, talk to your spiritual father. And I will tell you something. There's a situation that happened, I'm going to share this story, that is so strong, and it brought tears to my eyes. When I was saying the same thing about, as we start the fasting amount, let's talk to our spiritual father, let's talk to our Father of Confession, things like this. And let's not give ourselves exceptions. Actually, the one person who came to me afterwards and was keen on I'm not letting you go until I talk to you about something, was somebody one of the seniors, one of the older people. And I'm literally I'm 30, he's probably in his 80s or something. It was a very humbling experience. He said, Abuna, I've talked to my Father of Confession before about my health problems, and he gave me absolution for during the fast to be lenient, for example, with milk or something like that for my medication. So I told him, well, if your father told you this, then may God absolve you. He said, no, you pray for me and absolve me. I'm not leaving here until you absolve me for this. And he was so affected. He wanted, this is somebody who's keeping himself accountable. And he said, if you don't absolve me for it, I'm not going to have it. Can you imagine? He left it in my hands to tell him something like this. This level of humbleness is somebody who truly treasures for themselves the value of the fast. That in order for me to proceed, I need to have guidance. Without guidance, this person realized how important and crucial it is, because this is how the devil plays. The devil plays on those who don't have guidance. Because when you have guidance, when you fall, you'll get up again. It's like in a soccer game. When does it all go bad? When the coach gets a red card, for example, right? If there's no coach, there's no one to direct. Even if they're professional players, what happens? The team breaks apart because they don't have any guidance. They don't have any guidance. They don't have anyone to tell them what they don't see. It's very, very important. So if it's one thing I want you to take from today to prepare yourselves for this fast, number one, if you haven't confessed in a while, go and confess. Get spiritual guidance and try to fast. Number two, when you pray, try to focus on the prayers and ignore vain repetitions. And thirdly, and this should be before all of this, clean your hearts and your minds towards anyone whom you feel you're upset towards. Clean your minds and your conscience. If there's somebody that upsets you, go and approach them and talk to them and try to make things clean, make things wiped away for you to be able to fill yourself